Welcome to my channel. I'm Christine. I'm just a mom who loves to cook, and today I'm going to share with you 5 kitchen staples that you should start making today. These are nourishing foods that you can make at home that will save you money, that will help you cook better, and that will also help you eat healthier. So let's get started on homemade sourdough pizza crust. This is something you can make ahead of time, store in the refrigerator, pull out just what you need for that night, and it can keep for up to a week in the refrigerator. Then you can put it in the freezer if you don't end up using it. You can make whatever kind of pizza you want, but the idea is have it ready, have it on hand, and have a delicious pizza dinner whenever you want. First, you need to prep your ingredients. I have my active bubbly sourdough starter ready to go that I fed earlier in the morning, and this is about midday. I'm getting salt, flour, filtered water, and a food scale to work with. Now this recipe comes from natashakitchen.com. I will link that below. It's a great sourdough pizza crust recipe, and I've made a lot of different kinds, and this one so far has been my favorite. First, you're gonna add 500 grams of flour. I used all-purpose flour. She recommends 00 flour. And then add 12 grams of sea salt. And then you're gonna mix that up with a whisk. And then you're gonna add 335 grams of room temperature filtered water. And then 100 grams of active sourdough starter. You're going to mix that well with a firm spatula and get it nice and incorporated, and then use your hands to knead it just a little bit until it's all incorporated, and then cover it with some plastic wrap and let it rest for 30 minutes. When you come back to it, you're going to flour a clean work surface and knead your dough for about 2 minutes or so until it's nice and smooth and elastic. Mine was taking a little longer to get there, and so I also shaped mine into a nice round shape. Then you're going to oil a clean bowl with olive oil, cover that with plastic wrap again, let it sit and rise for the next 4 to 6 hours. So now you get a break and you can come back to it later. All right, so it is the end of the evening. We just had dinner. I need to clean up and do dishes, but this has been sitting out for about 4 hours and it's looking good. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut it into 4 pieces, and I'm gonna put it in these. These are little deli containers that you can buy on Amazon, and I will link that below. They are so handy. Use them all the time for leftovers and just like ingredients if you're prepping ingredients. So anyways, I'm gonna oil these, and then I'm going to cut this into 4, put them in here, and then we're gonna store them in the fridge, and they'll do an overnight bulk fermentation. Now you're just going to cut your dough into 4 pieces and shape each piece into a tight round shape and place it into an oiled container. This folding method helps to create a lot of tension in the dough, which is going to give you that tight round shape that you want. We love to do pizza night in our house on Friday nights, and having 4 pizza doughs ready to go at any time makes it so easy for each person to customize their pizza, and it saves a lot of money on takeout. To bake your pizza, you want to get a pizza stone, put it on the center rack, and crank your oven up to 550 degrees. You want high heat for this. While the oven is heating up, you can dust your surface with semolina flour and start shaping your dough. You can use your fists to gently stretch the dough. You want the pizza to be about 11 to 12 inches wide. The semolina is important here because it allows the dough to easily slide off the pizza peel. When you top your pizzas, be careful not to overload it so it's not too heavy. I'm using San Marzano tomatoes blended with garlic and a pinch of salt, and topping it with fresh mozzarella and some other cheeses. You want to slide that onto the piping hot pizza stone and let it bake. Bake your pizza for 8 to 10 minutes until it's golden and you see some big bubbles in the crust. It helps to use your pizza peel to give the pizza a little turn halfway through cooking, and then just set it on a cutting board and cut them all up and serve them up. This is a great, cheap meal that you can make for your family that feels really extra special, especially if you have the pizza dough ready ahead of time. You can have it on any night of the week.
That's a cute little slice. Too light.
Cute. Dun dun dun. Ding. Yay. Here you go.
Thank you.
Welcome. The next nourishing kitchen staple that we're going to be talking about is homemade bread. Now, if you are not making homemade bread yet, well, this is going to elevate your life so much. We're going to take the junk food bread that you buy at the store, which is hardly even recognizable. They've modified it so much, and we're going to replace it with nourishing homemade bread. And if you want to go as far as I have gone, you can mill your flour yourself. It's really not hard. I'm going to show you exactly how we do it in my house. Now we do sourdough. This is my starter. I feed it when I'm going to be making bread. I let it sit out on the counter until maybe closer to the evening, and then I stick it back in the fridge because I've already made my dough. I don't need it for the rest of the day. That's a great way to maintain your starter so you're not constantly having to babysit your starter. You can pull it out on the days that you're baking. When I'm in a hurry and when I want something simple, I use my bread machine. This is kind of a hack to make sourdough bread and bread baking just a little bit simpler and fit it into your life a little bit easier. So there's lots of different ways you can do it, but this is how we do it. If you're grinding your own flour, you're going to want to weigh your wheat berries first, and that will tell you how much flour you'll end up with. So I need 450 grams of flour in all. I'm doing a combination of einkorn wheat, hard red wheat, and also all-purpose white flour. I feel like my breads are never the same anymore because I'm always experimenting with different wheat berries and different flours. I'm really investigating right now and trying to find the perfect recipe for our family. Although every bread I've made so far I've loved, there are some that I like better than others. And so I'm still working on an exact recipe, and when I get that, I will post a link in the description below. But for the purposes of this video, I'll share what I did here, and this did turn out great. So you want to put the bread machine bowl right on your kitchen scale and measure out 285 grams of water, and then 140 grams of active bubbly sourdough starter. And then you're going to add 10 grams of salt, 60 grams of honey, and 50 grams of butter, which is about 1/4 cup. Then you're going to add your 450 grams of flour, and then you can go ahead and stick that bowl into the bread machine and select option number 12 if you have the KBS bread machine. And then this will mix the dough and rise the dough, but it's not going to bake it. So this allows your bread to rise throughout the rest of the day, and then you can shape it at the end of the day, stick it in the fridge for an overnight ferment, and bake it in the morning. So this is my dough at the end of the day. I fed my starter early in the morning, I mixed the dough around midday, and then I let it sit in the bread machine the whole day, and this is basically before I went to bed. All right, it's the end of the day, and my dough is risen, and thankfully it is not over fermented. You can tell by just how nice the dome is, and it's not like bubbly. So that's gonna be hopefully a really good loaf. I'm gonna put it in a pan now. Homemade bread like this can be so hands-off. As you can see, I touched this bread basically 3 different times throughout the day. Once really quick in the morning to feed my starter, and then in the middle of the day to mix the dough. The bread machine did most of the work for me, and now at the end of the day, I'm just shaping it as so, sticking it into a greased loaf pan, and then I'm going to cover that loaf pan with a towel, stick it in the refrigerator, and then tomorrow morning I will take it out, and then I can have fresh bread for the next day. This is not really a necessary step, but sometimes I think it helps to wet your hands and then just try to even out the top. And now I did put the Pullman loaf pan top on it, but you do have to be careful because the bread does rise in the refrigerator overnight. And so if it over rises, you might have it sticking to the top of your pan. Set timer for 40 minutes. Okay. I baked my bread for 45 minutes and then set it on a rack to cool and brushed the top with some butter. This gives it a nice, glossy, soft crust. And I promise this bread is going to be better than anything you've ever bought from the store. And the price really can't be beat. I haven't done the math, but I mean, we're talking maybe $2 or less for a gourmet sourdough loaf of bread made with freshly milled flour. All right, so the next kitchen staple that you should be making is homemade bone broth. This is something you should always have in your fridge or in your freezer. It's gonna stretch your grocery budget. It's also gonna add so much flavor to your food, and it's super nourishing. So I'm gonna show you how I make it, and I use my Instant Pot, and I'm gonna actually pull bones out from the freezer. I've already made a batch of broth with these bones. I'm just gonna reuse them because they're still good. So let's do that. You're gonna start with good filtered water and fill up your Instant Pot, and then go ahead and get your bones. You're just gonna throw your bones right in the water. We're gonna start really simple. Now these bones I've already used before, and so if they're the first time you're using the bones, you wanna roast them first in the oven. Get them nice and golden, just like you're browning some meat, and then go ahead and put them in the pot to make broth. And these bones, they were marrow bones, so I was able to get all that good marrow out of them before I actually made the broth. And there was a layer of marrow on the top of the broth as well. And I just scooped that off and used that for cooking and for all sorts of things. And now in your Instant Pot, you're gonna set it to the highest it will allow you to go, which for me is on high for 4 hours. After those 4 hours, let it depressurize, open it back up, and then add your veggies. You can use any veggies you want. I keep a Ziploc bag of veggie scraps in my freezer. When I'm cooking and chopping veggies, I just put the scraps in there and I use that for my broth. You're gonna set this for another 2 hours on high, and after that, you're gonna strain it through a colander into a big container. Now, I know there are better ways to make broth, but this is the easy, fast, busy mom way. And the broth does turn out gelatinous, which is the goal for me because you want that collagen and that gelatin to get into your food. It's so good for your skin, for your joints. It's also super delicious for any meal you are wanting to make. Now, after you pour it into this large container, this one that I have is perfect for this. I think it's 6 quarts, and you can store it in this. Just make sure that you let it come to room temperature before you actually stick it in the refrigerator. Now you can also portion it out into separate containers and freeze some for later, but I usually end up just storing it in this because it's so easy, and I will plan some really delicious soups and stews and chilies for the week. And just a quick mention, it's best if you use some organic, good quality bones because we are really extracting a lot of good stuff from these bones. This next one I'm going to fly through because it's so easy. Homemade mayo is one of those ingredients you want to keep on hand because it makes the perfect base for all of your sauces and dressings. First, you want to crack an egg into a jar and let it come to room temperature. For this recipe, you're going to need a teaspoon of Dijon mustard, a teaspoon of vinegar, and 1 egg will emulsify about 3/4 cups of oil. I'm using olive oil here, but I think avocado oil actually works best. The key to this recipe working is you want to use a narrow glass jar, and you want to put all of your acidic ingredients on the bottom of the jar. And then you can also add in a pinch of salt or garlic, whatever flavorings you'd like to add to your mayo. and then you add the oil on top of that so that the oil rests on top of the egg and those acidic ingredients. Then when you add your immersion blender into the jar, you're gonna start at the bottom and then slowly work your way up, and it will immediately emulsify all of that and turn it into mayo. So basically just make sure your egg is room temperature and you have some emulsifiers at the bottom of the jar, and this magic of science will turn your olive oil into mayo. It does turn out thicker when you use avocado oil, and this is one of the reasons I love homemade mayo, is because we're using healthy oils instead of canola or soybean oil like you'll find in store-bought mayos. It also tastes much better. Last but not least, we're moving on to homemade yogurt. This is a staple in our house. My kids love to eat yogurt. We also use it to make different sauces and marinades, and I put it in smoothies. It's just a great ingredient to have on hand, and making it yourself is going to save you a ton of money. So first you want to pour a gallon of milk into your Instant Pot. You're going to set it to the yogurt function and set it to boil. When it's done, pop open the lid, and I like to double check the temperature. The milk should heat up to 180, and so I turned on the saute function and just kept heating up this milk a little bit more until it hit 180, and then you can take that pot out of the Instant Pot. It really helps to have one of these instant read thermometers. I use a Thermapen, and it's not the cheapest thermometer, but it is very accurate and very fast, and I use it for bread making and cooking and all sorts of things, so I think it's worth it. I did link that below if you're interested. So you're gonna take that milk now and you wanna cool it down. Put your pot of milk into an ice bath and check the temperature. You wanna get it down to 110 degrees or below. You don't want it too hot before you add your cultures. So for the cultures, I'm just adding Greek yogurt, and then I did about a 1/4 cup, and then I'm gonna add some of that warmed milk, and I'm gonna mix that together, and this creates my starter for the batch of yogurt. So you add that starter to the whole pot of milk, and you wanna whisk it really well so that there are no chunks or anything like that. And then that pot of milk now is full of cultures, and as it sits in the Instant Pot, it will slowly turn into yogurt. So when I put it back into the Instant Pot, I set it to about 12 hours. You can do longer than that. You can also do shorter than that for about 8 hours. However, the longer you go, the more sour it becomes. So I think 12 hours is a good middle ground. When you're finished and it's time to take it out, it's going to seem still a little bit watery, and that's okay because it's still warm milk. So go ahead and pour it into a container and stick it in the refrigerator. The next day you will notice that it is already thicker, and then I like to take it a step further and pour it into this Greek yogurt strainer. I find that this really helps to get that Greek yogurt quality that we all love. You will need to pour your yogurt into this strainer in 2 batches because it won't all fit in there. But when you're done, you will have a large container of thick Greek yogurt for about $3 instead of about $8. I have linked all the tools that I used in this video down below. Feel free to comment if you have any questions, and please like and subscribe if you like this sort of content. My channel is all about inspiring other homemakers who want to get more creative or learn a new skill, and really my goal is for you to live a more joyful life and to make your own food if you want to. See you next time.